by putting on videotape as much personal information and history about the school, the music program, and your experiences, not just limited to necessarily to Pearl Harbor and Pennsylvania, but starting there or before, whatever might be of interest to future Navy musicians.
Listen, I'll talk to the time up until the time where I was on my way to Washington. You do the same. You go first, you're older than I am. That's my father, actually.
I was driving a...
Tell him your name.
Oh, Dutch Albert.
Is that what it says on your ID card?
That's what it says.
Okay.
I was driving that coal and timber truck up in Pennsylvania, and 6 hours a day, about 14 hours a day, and I was one of the young guys, and I had a radio put in my truck, and everybody thought I was crazy because trucks didn't have radios. And I'm driving back with a load of coal. I had to shovel off 14 tons of coal. And I drove back, and the Navy band came on at noon. And they advertised this Navy School of Music. They give you 2 years schooling, but you would have to enlist for 6 years. And then I got home, all the way home, I got to thinking about this. I looked around all the old men I know, and they were really working their tails off, and they were going to do that until the day they died. I said, that's got to be better than this.
What year was that?
That was in 1937.
Well, you were playing clarinet in high school.
No, we didn't have a high school band. I was just playing clarinet in country bands. Every little town in Pennsylvania had a band.
Country western, you mean actually out in the country?
Yeah, every little town had its own band. If you had a town of 40 people, you had a 30-piece band. I mean, yes, when I joined the Navy, I had 7 band uniforms I had to turn in from different towns when I joined the Navy. But anyhow, I wrote the letter, say I'd like to be considered, and forgot about it. And come about September, I got a letter from the Navy School of Music. It was actually a Navy band stationary, and told me about the process. And the first thing I had to do is do the physical in Philadelphia. And
At a recording station.
yeah. And then went down to the Navy School of Music after I passed that physical.
How long was the School of Music in existence at that point?
The music school was formed in 1935.
And this was 39?
This was 37.
37.
Right.
2 years later.
In the early summer 37. Anyhow, I went down to Washington, and J.M. Thurman, who's a college graduate, a Curtis Institute graduate, a French horn player in the Navy band, was the chief in charge of the school. He was first class at the time, and the only administrative staff he had in the school was the first class yeoman, which was Thurman's assistant. And I auditioned. They sent me to Norfolk for 3 weeks for boot camp, and came back to the school.
Tell them what we were only there 3 weeks.
Well, we were there for 3 weeks because as musicians we were privileged characters. We only had to go through the detention system.
We were pre-assigned.
Get all your shots and all that good stuff. And plus the fact that we had a definite place to go when we get out. So we didn't have to go through all the drilling, but we found out later that most of the musicians that went down there became the leaders of the awkward squad because musicians have been used to marching. And these other kids that didn't know left from right, well, it was up to the musicians to teach those kids the left foot and the right foot and what to do with them. So anyhow, we got back to music school in early December of 1937. And we found out that most of the instructors all of them were from the Navy band. Some of them came out of the old Sousa band, like Herbie Weber was a tuba player in the old Sousa band. John Legal, a clarinet teacher, was the E-flat clarinet player in the old Sousa band. And there's Mix and Fee, trumpet instructors. There's Herb Goucher, drum instructor.
Louis Gotcha.
Yeah, Louis Goucher.
These were all instructors at the school.
Yes, but they're Navy band players.
There was extra duty for them.
This is
They
really
weren't
extra
that
duty for
happy
these
about it.
guys to come over to school and teach. And then there was McNamara. McNamara was an Italian guy. He came over after World War I. He came in out of some famous Italian band and came over to the United States and got in the Navy band. Because at that time, the Navy recruited a lot of musicians before that from different countries. And he was a solfege teacher. And he said you can't play a horn unless you learn solfege. So we went through that thing, and
Dutch, explain what solfege is.
Solfege is where you sing the notes and you learn the pitch and the phrasing and the memory work, and you really use the music. Now, he claimed that in Italy, you learn solfege, and you take solfege for 6 years before you get a musical instrument. Because after you know solfege, the musical instrument is mere mechanics. All the music that you're going to know, you already got through the solfege, which is singing the parts. And every musician in Italy...
You're singing do, re, mi, fa, but the tonic is always do.
Well, yeah, no matter what note it starts
You
on,
get
it's
the
do.
thing it out, and it starts out, it's do, and you do, re, mi, fa, like that, you know.
Right.
And that's hard to do, especially for a drummer.
And you transpose, because no matter what note you start on, or what key you start on, it's do.
Yeah.
So, this is...
Gene, you were clarinet. I'm sorry, Dutch, you were clarinet. Gene, what was your instrument?
I auditioned on drum, but I had my tenor with me.
Okay.
I'm going to catch up to Dutch.
Yeah,
All right, yeah. Okay.
I was in Tennessee,
go ahead.
farm community, small college community, the townies, and I started playing drums in the drum music corps. And my sister was playing piano, but then I was a good drummer, but I was the only one, so I didn't have to really read too well. I made up good parts. But if I could read, my twin sister taught me key signatures and all that, and so I took up the saxophone. Vincent Lopez's lead alto player was in town drying out. He lived there, he started it. He gave me a tenor. It didn't have any pads up on top. I taught it paper under the keys and rubber bands around it. No pad on the low B, B flat. It just went clang, clang when you pushed the rhythm. So, very poor family, but I still started college at the little college there when I was 17. And I took all the music courses, and I've never been so disappointed in my life. It was all music appreciation, classical. I said, no, I want to perform. I don't care about the history of music in Europe. You know, I'm not interested. I want to be a good drummer and a good saxophone player. He said, we don't have anything for you. I said, I know you don't. So I was wasting my parents' money. So one day I came home on Saturday. I had the concert on Saturday. I'd been playing tennis there in the Navy band. And they're playing Anchors Away on the end and it's fading away. The guy says,
Gene, where was the Navy band?
Washington, D.C. Now I just heard it on the radio.
Oh, you heard it on the radio.
Yeah.
All right.
And I said, so what that guy talking about? So I got to listen. Newly formed Navy School of Music is now accepting drummers and French horn players. Thinking to myself, what the hell is this? So I looked further into that thing, And sure enough, it was true. So I mailed away, got all the literature. Had to get a letter from my minister, from my principal, all the band leaders I'd ever played for. And
Now, Gene, at the time, were you in high school, or were you out of high school?
I was out of high school. I was a freshman in college, but I graduated from high school when I was 15. So, when I was wasting my family's money by going to school, because I was the first student here trying to life. So they sent me to Nashville. I did the physical thing. Came back, waited, and got the call to, and my parents, they had to sign this paper because I was underage. And never been out of the state of Tennessee. Got on a train with to Washington, D.C. Walked in the main gate at the Sail Loft. In the rain, with my drum and a suitcase and a tenor case. And walked, and I see this sailor walking towards me. I said, first, you know where the music school is? He says, yeah, go that way, turn like that, it's a big building in the corner. It was Rice, clarinet player, saxophone. Went up there, and he says, you have Navy School of Music and very bad black print.
Now, what year was this, Gene? What year was that?
This was 38.
38.
Doctor was already there.
Okay.
I went in, done an audition. Kind of brutal. It's a tough audition. He says, you're a good drummer, but you don't read worth a damn. I said, well, I didn't have to read worth a damn because I was the only snare drummer in the band. I said, I can read. And I said, besides, I don't really care at this point. I was ready to go home right there. He said, no, you promised to really work. I want you in the band because you play good. You're good. I said, okay, all right. And I pointed to my tenor. It's old silver, no pads on it. I said, would you want to hear me play my tenor? He says, why the hell would I want to hear you play that ugly thing, So he says, you're a drummer. All right, I went in as a drummer. I was never the dance drummer. I was the concert snare drummer and the jazz tenor player. You were he never had a saxophone in his hand. He was a solo clarinet player.
The solo clarinet players, the people that were priming for solo clarinet players in band weren't allowed to play saxophone. All your energy had to go into the clarinet.
I didn't believe in dance music.
Yeah.
He would let us rehearse on our own time, but not officially.
But the music program at that time, for the most part, ceremonial in character.
That's right.
Concert band, ceremonial.
The dance and big band, although the style came later.
Yes.
After the war.
As soon as you got away from the school, that happened. But it didn't happen in school. There was very few dance bands ever got to rehearse in school during school hours. There was all concert bands, ceremonial stuff. And the school played a lot of funerals over in Arlington. Winter, summer, we rode in an open stake body truck, whether it was raining or snowing or whether it was cold or whether it was hot. You stood up in a stake body truck and held your instrument with one hand and hang onto the sideboards with the other. And we played a lot of funerals like that, especially when the Navy band didn't want to go out and play them.
Well,
The school musicians did.
Thurman would take them, and there was something about me and a straight drum on that dirge tempo. The singer God could march to it. So he would take me in this coupe of his over to Arlington, and I would be the drummer for the parade. Found out later from him that we were attached to the Navy band. We didn't know it. I didn't know it.
Yeah, the school was under the Navy band. The only detachment we had at the Navy receiving station was for pay purposes and for lodging. But Charlie Prenter, Lieutenant Prenter, who was officer in charge of the Navy band at the time, he was the head of the school of music. And an example that comes a little later, but we'll get into that. But anyhow,
If I can interrupt, at that point in time, was the focus of the school, and the purpose of the school, to provide musicians as a feeding system to the Navy band, or was it to establish fleet bands?
it was established fleet bands because
Yes.
the Navy band members were taken in directly from civilian life.
Yes.
Most of them from conservatories, like Curtis Institute put a lot of guys in the Navy band because they couldn't find work in the outside. So they joined the Navy band and the Marine band.
You know, the concept was beautiful. You get these guys, you train them, you teach them, you get them formed into a group, and they play at school as a group for a while. And you send them their music, their horns, the whole thing out as a group. Set it in place, and it functions as a band right then.
And that's where the unit designation came from.
That's it.
That's right.
That's right. And it was just a great concept.
Yeah, the school actually operated, well, we had harmony, and we had theory lessons, classes. And of course, the solfege, do, mi, so, do, si, la, so, classes. And then your instrumental lessons, you were required to practice, I forget what the minimum was now, but most of the guys practiced 40 and 50 hours in addition to going to school all day. You run up to school before breakfast.
A lot of hours.
Yes, and you come down and eat lunch, you go back up and practice, and you had to log in, and there was a man there to check to make sure that you logged in right and logged out right. After you eat dinner, you go back up and practice.
Well, how long, or what was the duration of the school at that time?
2 years.
2 years?
Yes, but
You lived it for 6.
Oh, okay.
And you went to school for 2, and then in the fleet for 4.
But school for 2 years didn't mean you got training in the school for 2 years. You got a lot of practical experience. like funerals.
Funerals in Arlington.
Well, oh yes, but this is experience. It's something we never did before. And
Is that what that
and
was?
then during the annual press ball, they always came over to the music school to get a chorus to sing for President Roosevelt. You go down there to the National Press Club for that ball, and Reachmack, the flute player in the Navy band, was the choral teacher. And one tune we did in 1938 for the press ball, Roosevelt's favorite tune was Tippy Tippy Tin. So we formed a chorus out of all the students over at the school, went down to the press club and sang Tippy Tippy Tin for Roosevelt. And we came back on the snake body truck again to the music school. And then the next morning we're up working at school again. But the teachers, they were good teachers. They knew their instruments, and we really, you could say we got our money's worth. My experience in the first 2 years, I was there, and I come in, go start school in December, and the next August, I went to Shakedown Cruise as the assistant clarinet, solo clarinet player in Band 7. This was my training.
What was the ship?
The USS Honolulu, a 10,000-ton cruiser, one of the first square sterns. And so we went to Europe.
If I can interrupt, where was the cruise? East Coast, West Coast?
No, to Europe.
Oh, you went to Europe.
Yeah, we picked her up in New York, and she went to Europe for a shakedown cruise. I come back from the shakedown cruise, and in October, I was put in as solo clarinet player in Band 8. And then we went to South America on a shakedown cruise on the USS Phoenix.
And I was in the man then.
Yeah, and this was Band 8 was now formed.
But is it, these shakedown cruises, were these considered as part of the school program?
No, it was a
No,
mini cruise.
you're out of, yeah, but
No,
you're,
shakedown cruise.
no, but I mean, you're essentially out of school now? You're out of the music?
No.
That's what I'm saying, this is all part of the
This is
school.
this is part of our 2 years.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Take you and put you out on a special assignment.
I mean, went down, and then they said, "Hey, you got to play saxophone." I never played saxophone in my life. I said, "You're going to learn now." Didn't have a saxophone. I had to borrow it from some kid. He came from California, and I borrowed his saxophone to go on the cruise because he wasn't allowed to play saxophone in the school. He was also a clarinet player. And I got the saxophone and sat down. We got down to the ship. We started rehearsing, and that's when I learned to play saxophone. In dance band, and we broadcast all over South America.
Played in
We
all
played
the
in all the
embassies.
embassies.
We're going, what, 4 months?
Well, yeah, until middle of January when we came back.
This was Band 8?
Yeah, band 8.
I was the tenor player.
Yeah, and J.I. Carey, first class, had the band at the time.
Yeah, I carried the guy that was
So we came back from South America, and
after Thurman sent for me.
yeah,
Thurman called me down to his office. He used to take me on the drumming thing. Those Seaman guards loved me. Called me Bandy. I got to ride in the truck, but they all looked the same. Tattoos, thin, tall, and Seaman, 3 hash marks. So, he called me down to his office. He says, "You're going out to leave Lloyd Ford. He's coming back. The Navy band." I said, "Yeah, what do you play?" He says, he's the drummer. He's the drummer for the band." I said, "No, he plays dance drum." "Of course." He says, "You're going." I said, "I don't play dance drum. I'm a concert snare drummer. I'm not a dance drummer." He says, "Of course you are. You're band aid of the drummer." I said, "No, the bass drummer is the dance drummer." He says, "Who's the piano player?" I said, "The flute player." He said, "What do you play in the dance?" And I said, "I'm the jazz tenor player." He said, "Jesus Christ." and the yeoman is in his office. And he looks up, he says, "Come in here." And the guy came in, he says, "Is this right?" The yeoman says, "Yeah, that's the way it is in band 8. Thurman didn't even know it, you know. He didn't know what the hell was happening. So I stayed with band 8.
As a dance drummer?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's the tenor man.
Drummer,
Okay.
and he's a tenor player.
But see, all this happened when we were away from the school.
Yeah.
Right? That's why Thurman didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But after we came back from that, and Roosevelt says, "I want to go to Caribbean for 6 months. I want a band."
He was going fishing.
Yeah,
Caribbean.
6 weeks in the Caribbean. And so Charlie Bender says, "Take Band 8. They just came back." So we went under President Roosevelt's cruise, and we played for his lunch, and we played for his dinner, and we played in the evening before the movies until he got through with his dinner and came out and watched the movies. That was on the USS Houston.
They were the red canvas on the forecastle, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Red canvas on the forecastle. Without Strauss waltzes. So I went to go do this concert, Strauss waltzes. I'm playing drums. I'm a little late. I was not consistently late, was I? Don't rise these people. So I'm running with my drum. I run around the turret. I literally ran into him. He's sitting on a wheelchair with a lamp thing. Now, you know, it didn't go over. I said, "I'm sorry, Mr. President." He said, "It's all right, son." "Just where you from?" I said, "Tennessee." He says, "A lot of good people in Tennessee." I said, "Yes, sir, excuse me, and zoom on out here, you know." But it was, he had a bosun's mate chief, was his, that took him fishing. They would put him and the chief in the boat when it was still on the, what do you call it?
Davits.
Davits. And then they would just lower the whole thing.
There's a whaleboat, a converted
Yeah.
whaleboat with a special seat in it for him.
What was he fish? Was he shark or
No, he caught all kind of fish, but
swordfish?
most of them he threw back unless he got a good dolphin or something like that. And then he came back to the ship and the cook had to cook it for him.
But they would also hang it up on its tail, and you could have your picture made with it if you wanted to.
But he didn't really give the band any trouble. We came back into Culebra Bay in Cuba after the fishing trip.
Yeah.
And he reviewed the fleet. Now, after he reviewed the fleet, we paid honors for 23 different admirals. No two of them came, each one came by himself.
And it's all,
From 4-star, and there was only one 4-star at the time, down to 3 stars and down to 2 stars. And we played honors for every single one of them. And every ship we passed, we played the Star Spangled Banner for. Now, if there was that many admirals, you can imagine how many ships there were. Every little scow and everything else had an admiral on it that day.
it was a conference.
And we played honors for all the ships we passed. So we got tired of playing honors and Star Spangled Banner that day because it was a full day because we had to play the admirals on, we had to play them off. And that night we had to play before the movies.
There's a thing in regs that says if the band has to perform later in the day and it's raining and it's going to get the music wet and their instruments and it's going to conflict with them playing later that day, the band may be secured and not play in the rain. It's starting to rain. Leader says to the LD,
What was the leader?
Reg so-and-so.
That's J.I. Carey, first
He
class.
still had it.
Yeah, the GI carry. It says regulations so-and-so, so-and-so, that you may secure the band in inclement weather if it's going to interfere with them performing later during the day. And he says it's just starts raining. He looked at him and says, I'll tell you when it's raining. You take back with the band and get there, So we stood there and played honors.
We came back into Charleston, South Carolina.
Well, that's right.
And then Secretary of Navy Knox at the time says, hey, I want to go fishing. I'll take the Houston. He came down aboard the Houston and we went down Caribbean for another 3 weeks with him. And we came back, and that's when I found out that he really belonged to the Navy band. Because the first trumpet player, Carl Bowers, was also from Pennsylvania, and myself, we went over to the University of Miami and Coral Gables in Liberty because I had an uncle that was going to college there. And the band was in rehearsal. And he introduced us to the band leader. And the band leader says, why don't you two sit in? What do you play in the band? I'll play solo clarinet. I'm the solo cornet player. Told the guys to get off their seats. We sat there through the rest of the rehearsal. At the end of rehearsal, he says, I'm granting both of you a full scholarship starting next semester. And boy, we were happy. We came back to the music school with that letter and showed it to Thurman. He says, you've got to take it over to Benter because he would have to approve that. So we parade over to Benter over to Sail Loft, and he looked at the letter and read it. If you're worth that much to the University of Miami, you're worth that much to us. But we have the contract. He says, request denied. Threw him in the wastebasket. So that ended that 4-year scholarship. But that was that kind of Navy.
We went through the first chapter again in the dexterity.
Yeah, and
At that point in time, where was the school physically located?
the school was physically located at 11th and M Street Southeast Washington,
Northeast
D.C.,
corner.
on the corner of the Navy Yard, in an old flour mill, a converted flour mill, two-story brick building with a coal furnace in it. We had to tend the furnace 24 hours a day in the wintertime on a 4-hour watch. And it was always two guys. And Tony Mitchell, who later became the leader of the Navy band, and I used to play clarinet duets while we were tending the furnace. Well, you had to go through the building once an hour. So we played duets, and once an hour, one of us would run through the building. It only took 5 minutes, because it was not that big a building, only 2 floors.
You made reference to upsale or something like that? The location of the
Sail loft.
sail loft, yeah. What is sail loft?
The sail loft is where they originally made the sail.
Yeah.
L-O-F-T
For the sailing
Sail
ships.
for the sailing ships.
And in fact, the Navy band is still in that building, but it is going to move. They're going to rebuild it completely, starting, I think, next month or the month after. Navy band is temporarily moving over to the old Naval Air Station, and they're going to rebuild the sail loft and make a modern band building out of it. So it should really be tremendous.
This being April 2003.
Yeah.
So it'll be a month from now.
Yes. Right.
2003.
That's good.
Move the history along a little bit to where you were then assigned, left the school on a more permanent.
No, not yet.
Not
we
yet?
we went
Okay.
from the Secretary of Navy cruise. We came back, and they said we are going to augment Band 8 by 8 people and put a chief in charge. And you're going to the New York World's Fair. You will be the official band in the New York World's Fair this entire summer. So we went up there and we were berthed on the old Seattle, and the other troops, the review troops, were based in one of the barracks there. And every morning there was 24 buses in the convoy to go out to the Court of Peace, New York World's Fair, and with a police escort.
How many were there in the band at the time?
Wow. That made 28.
28.
With the 8 augment. Oh, and they bought us new whites. We got 2 extra sets of
We're on
whites out of
tailor-made
it.
uniforms, whole new C-bag tailor-made uniforms, new instruments. They gave me a Leedy floating head street drum, which was the most gorgeous thing I ever saw in my life. That steel rim wasn't one of these wooden things, you know, that you tighten down. This was keyed thing, and it was just a gorgeous drum. And they gave me another snare drum, you know, to play, to help out.
Almost every day we marched from there into the Court of Peace and played honors for some official. That summer we played honors for almost ahead of every country you can name.
If I recall, the World's Fair was 39.
This was the one in 39, right? And we were up there from March until November. We came back after they got Camp Washington built, which was tents. We lived in tents on the fairgrounds.
Half wood up the year and then 10 times.
And the Army had a detachment there, and the Army had a band. They played colors every morning. No, we played colors every morning. They played colors every night, their band. But we marched from that Camp Washington over to the Court of Peace every single day to give somebody honor. And
The Queen and her consort
Yeah.
of England.
you name it, we played it for almost every president or king or queen in the world who came to New York World's Fair. And we were the ones that gave the official honors. And then on Pan American Day, near the end of summer, we were privileged to be the first people who ever played on public television. They had a television set up in every window of Macy's department store in New York City. And it was going to well advertised that this is going to be televised live from the Court of Peace at the fairgrounds, into Macy's department store. And we played honors for 23 South American, Pan American country. And as you well know, some of those things go on for 4 and 5 minutes, those national anthems, Brazilian especially. And we played those 23 anthems on Pan American Day on live television for the first time it was ever seen by the public, which was kind of feather. We came back to school at the end of that. And I says, okay, you graduated. Here's your paper to prove you graduated.
I have my diploma. I graduated 7th in a class of 21. And how in the hell they ever figured that out? I was doing the first chapter against 3 times. I had 4 drum lessons. That's it. And now do I get to be 7th? Anyway,
well, accidents will happen.
our dance band was getting better and better and better all the time.
We had a chief who wasn't very good at it.
He was a tuba player. Not even string bass, just tuba, man.
But the dance band had that much interested in its own. We would have sax section rehearsals. The brass section would have brass rehearsals. We'd rehearse together, and he would come out of chief's quarters and say, "What are you doing?" And we'd say,
Who was he?
Axel Jensen.
Okay.
And he just couldn't understand that on our own, we would rehearse. Because each guy would try to make the other guy better. And it turned out, I would venture to say, the best dance band the Navy ever had.
Well,
It wasn't a commercial band. It was it sounds selfish, but we played good for ourselves because we were satisfying each other.
You know, the dance band itself, how big an ensemble was it?
At that time, it was 4 saxes, 3 trombones, and
4 trumpets.
4 trumpets. And
Really?
we never had a functioning piano player. We had a few. Well, like on the South American cruise, J.I. Carey, this piano player, he looked kind of like Quasimodo. So he would let the top down on the grand piano, put this big plant on top of it, so nobody could see the piano player. Which is kind of a...
But we did. We played all the embassies in South America and the governor's palace in Puerto Rico. Radio broadcasts from Montevideo, from Santos, Brazil, and from Buenos Aires.
We would do concerts at the dock.
Yeah, and concerts at the dock and so forth. We played a lot of good stuff. But when we get out in the fleet, we still kept working to satisfy. The saxophone's working like heck, so the trumpet section or the brass section would respect the saxophone section. And then the brass section was rehearsing so that the saxophone section couldn't say, "Hey, play your part." It was one of those things, but that made the band good.
It was a good band, no doubt about it.
We used to go to the Palladium in Hollywood where the name bands were playing, and we'd ask them for score, the parts, and we'd go back to the bandstand and copy the parts while Benny Goodman or Tommy Dorsey and those bands are playing out front. We'd copy the tune we wanted in backstage because they pulled the parts and gave them to us. If we couldn't do that, several of us learned how to take tunes off records. And we did that. We did that a couple times, and then stocks came coming out on the same tune that we had just spent all the time, like Tommy Dorsey's Swanee River. I had just finished taking that off the record, and I guess 2 months later the stock came out, almost exactly the same thing, and so we stopped doing that because it took a lot of time, wore out a lot of records which we couldn't afford, and so it was really a hard fight to be good. But we did. But there were other bands doing the same thing. It's just that we had a little more experience from our 2 years school than they did, because we had done more things. We got more experience. We played more concerts. We played more different kinds of music. We played for different people.
Well, how many bands were there at that point in time?
Well, there was 8 when we went out. We were the 8th one. But
9 and 10 were being formed.
right,
And when they got the right instrumentation,
there's two
with
bands,
the balance,
2 bands a year.
with balanced abilities. One good lead player, not quite good, but also capable lead player, not, little like that. Not all lead players, nothing like that. It was balanced.
But in 1937, there were 1,500 applications, and it took 40 of us out of 1,500 applications. Now, I'm not sure, but I'm sure in 1938, 39, the Depression was still on, and there was just as many applications. For example, one of the trumpet player I'm talking about that got a scholarship, Bowers, he enlisted 3 months before I did. And his service number was only 7 numbers lower than mine. That's how many people had come into the Navy from eastern Pennsylvania. 7 in the 3 months.
What town in eastern Pennsylvania does?
Well, I'm from Lebanon. Bowers was from Harrisburg.
Well, how did Shakerstown get into it?
Well, Schaeferstown is where I lived when I joined the Navy. It's a little town, 585 population. Now, almost 70 years later, the town still has 585 population. But it had a 35-piece band that played good stuff, and it had a 30-piece mixed chorus with it that sang as a band. And this is really the kind of training that I had before going in the Navy. And those old guys taught us young kids really how to play. They give us experience in playing all kind of music, because they played all the old chestnuts. And we learned to play those from the old men in the band. The solo clarinet player in my band, the hometown band, there was a tinsmith, and he had his little finger in his right hand severed. He put it back together himself, but he had no feeling in it. So he built metal slides over that hole. So when he put his finger down, he'd slide down on that, he'd slide down on that, and it stopped. He knew he had it covered. And he could play all kind of clarinet. So we had a solo cornet player in the band, had false uppers and lowers. And he didn't know that you lay out every other phrase or every other part of the march. He thought when you start playing the march, you play it all the way through. And he did. They didn't know that you trade off and really only play half of it like they do today. You start playing, you played at the end.
You each got your diploma from the school.
Yeah.
And what was the ceremony? There was no ceremony.
There was no ceremony. Just said,
They put it in your record.
yeah, here's your thing. No frame, no nothing, no ceremony, no.
Now what happened?
Well, then we went back out. We went out to the fleet
As
as a unit band.
okay, permanent assignment kind of thing.
We went out as come cruise at Batford.
We went on the Pyro, went through the canal,
The old
San
ammunition.
Diego.
Our band quarters when the Pyro was down in the bottom of the first hole. And you know what was down there? It was an ammunition ship, of course. Down there, that was the coffins and the lines that were taking out to other ships. The big heavy lines we were taking out. That was down there, and our bunks, we laid them out on top of the coffins.
I slept on top of a casket.
Yeah, and the caskets, that's right. That was our bed. We laid our mattresses on top of the caskets, and that was our thing.
Oh,
And
we had
you went straight up the ladder.
seagoing. I could give you a hammock and a little mattress, and your sea bag was full. You roll up the hammock and the thing, put the sea bag in it like this, fold the end of the hammock up, and go around it like this, tie it all together, and you pick that son of a gun up and carry it on your back.
Yeah, it weighed a good 100 pounds because everything you owned from your bed on down was in that sea bag and hammock. Then you carried that and your musical instrument wherever you went.
What's on the Houston? We had to sleep in it when we were on one of those trips.
Yeah, what we did on the Honolulu, we slept in hammocks all the time.
You look at
World
the
War
upper
II
head while you're on the way, and you think it's going like this. It's not. You're still, and the ship's going like this. And you get sick just the same. So you get up and sleep on the
We slept in
deck.
hammocks until World War II started. My first night in Washington, to go back a minute, when I left Philadelphia, they gave you a streetcar token to get to the train station, a ticket for the train, and a token to get on the streetcar in Washington, D.C.
Right.
No instructions, that's what they gave you. So you go to the train station, take a train to Washington, D.C., here's the ticket, you get off the train, you go down to the Navy Yard for your audition. Period, that was it. Here's this little boy from Pennsylvania trying to figure out how you do this, and where's the station, all that good stuff. You gotta ask people on the street to find out, which is, I guess, also part of the training. Anyhow, I got the streetcar in front of the Union Station in Washington, D.C., and asked the guy how to get to the Navy Yard. He said, read the sign, lad. Big sign in front of the streetcar says Navy Yard on it. so I told him where I was going and why. And I said, I got to find a place to sleep at night. He said, well, just before we get to the car barn, there's some rooming houses there. You can probably get a room in one of those. So he got about a block before the streetcar barn there at 8th and M Street. He stopped. He says, now there's 3 rooming houses there. He says, take your choice. Go and find a room. So I went and talked to a lady. She gave me a room, a front room with a bay window in it. I went to bed, a little lost soul, you know. And next morning I woke up. I hear band music. And I look out the window. I'm right across the street from the Marine Barracks at 8th and I. And that's the Marine Band playing the 4 colors in the morning. Man, you talk about a thrill for a kid. That really made my day. Then I
Changing
walked
of the guard in the morning.
Yeah. So I walked down to the Navy Yard, which is just a block and a half down the street, and over to the music school and went in for my audition. But those are one of the thrills. But there's so much to the beginning of the Naval School of Music that it would take 10 guys 10 years to tell the whole story. It was a no-nonsense program. You know, if you goofed, you paid for the goof. There was no second chances. You know, if you missed Buster in the morning, you missed Buster in the morning. My best friend was, how long was Bowers restricted for? 2 weeks or something like that because he was late for callers in the morning. He was there in time to play callers, but he was late for first call. And like he was restricted for 3 weeks. He couldn't do a show. And then one time he told the Admiral's orderly, he brought out a pitcher of ice water and 1 glass for the band that was playing for an Admiral's party. And it was summertime. Brought the 1 glass pitcher and handed it to the first guy. And Bauer says, tell him the Admiral to jam it. And the orderly went and told the chief of staff. The chief of staff comes out with the Marine orderly, and he went right down to the brig for 3 days on bread and water. It was the old Rocks and Shoals Navy.
What was
Everything was listed. All the offenses were listed, and the punishment.
Dutch. When was the concert? We had to go to what night was that? We had to go to the
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to concert. We decide, well, we're going to get in the back of the formation marching. We get up to the gate going out. And the thing goes like this over to the sail loft. We're in the back of this thing. When we get there, we're just going to march right on to and just have liberty. You know, not go to the concert, to hell with it. We'll go up, have a couple of beers. Somebody in the van ratted on us. And we get up there, the current go this way, we go like this. Just outside is this first class of the advanced course standing there waiting for us. So that went over really big. Did you ever find out who did that to us? Anyway.
But it's a tremendous program. But it's all started before we got there. You know, it was going 2 years before I got there. But the background of the people who started it and everything, those guys who were instructors from the Navy band, they didn't get excused from any Navy band work because they were over there teaching. They still had to do the rehearsal and then come over and teach. They still had to play the concert and then come over there and teach. They didn't get anything out of it except extra work to come over there and be instructors at the School of Music. We had a guy named Jones who used to
Dad.
a lot of the...
Dad Jones?
No, not that. The Jones, the guy who was a arranger, used to sit there in that little office and arrange music for the Navy band, concert music, drove a big Chrysler.
Transcriptions.
Yeah. And he was from one of the big bands, one of their early bands. So the music I was talking about this morning in there, the Navy band, the music school, really goes back in there for the nucleus of the people who came in and formed the Navy School of Music. You know, it wasn't our idea to start it. This idea was from other people, from those old guys. They came in and thought we could start it.
You went in 37, you said it started in 35.
The school started in 35, right?
Year I was born.
There you go.
No, but all the major bands, like the Annapolis band at that time, English was not the first language in that band. I mean, it was like 55% of them were Europeans. But they were the band now.
Yeah, there were a lot of Italians in the Naval Academy band at the time.
Yeah.
Most of them. A lot of people in the Navy band were Italian descent.
Man, they had rackets going on there with them that they knew in the ladies' camp that they were born. But they finally got that all straightened out. Got straightened out.
You were on the way to the Pacific.
Well, yeah,
In the ammunition ship.
we were assigned, when we got out there, we were assigned to come Commander Cruiser Division 10. The Admiral Commander Cruiser Division 10 at the time was on the USS Honolulu, and it was Admiral Husband E. Kimmel,
Come on.
two-star admiral.
You know,
And we went out and we did from,
Didn't he become Secretary of the Navy?
no,
no, this is the guy who was court-martialed.
this was the guy with court-martial for Pearl Harbor.
Okay, yes.
And we went out with them, and the fleet went on maneuvers in March of 1940. They went out to Hawaii to end the maneuvers, and that's where it stayed. Our ship came back for 10 days in October, and came back again for 10 days in the following October. That was the time we came back to the United States. rest of the time we were on the fleet, the movers are tied up in Pearl Harbor, and Admiral Kimmel and those square stern cruisers, he did all kind of tactical stuff and screwed up his battleship divisions and stuff with those square stern cruisers and their 6-inch guns. So when it came time, Richardson was commander of the SINCPAC, commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet. He came back in 1940 to say he needs more protection and so forth at Pearl Harbor. And of course, maybe some people don't know that when the Navy is in an Army-controlled place, it's the Army's responsibility to protect the Navy, except extreme circumstances. And Richardson came back and asked Roosevelt, and Marshall at the time was the chief of the staff Army, for more protection. And he got in trouble, and it was in February 1941 that he did that. And Roosevelt fired him on the spot for insinuating that he knew more about the fleet in Pearl Harbor than Roosevelt's Secretary of Navy and so forth in Washington, D.C. And Admiral Kimmel was assigned to be Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet over 47 other qualified admirals. And that's how, when he became Commander-in-Chief of the Fleet. And then when he transferred to the Pennsylvania, the fleet flagship, well, he says, I'm going to take my own band with me.
That's
This is
the thing you
That's
learn.
Kimmel.
Admiral Kimmel.
Right.
That's the thing you learn. You don't mess with admirals' bands. Having your own band as an admiral is a big prestige thing. So nobody screws with the admiral's band. So he just took us with him. And the band that was there came back to the...
Came back to shore duty.
Yeah. So we wound up on Pennsylvania.
I think they went to Norman, Oklahoma. The band that we relieved on the Pennsylvania.
That was a ship's company band. That was on the Pennsylvania before you was a ship's company
Well,
band.
they went to Texas.
No, there was no ship's company band. It was the Admiral's band.
No, not your band. The band was on Pennsylvania
When you
before
replaced-
you.
Oh, went to Norman, Oklahoma
Yeah.
for shore duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the band there. War started. They sent Tex Bennett to do, wasn't it?
And disbanded the Admiral's Orchestra. So he had also a 13-piece orchestra to play for his dinner parties and stuff, besides the band, the official honors.
Same chief, same leader.
Yeah, same thing. We would have to do trios in the wardroom in the evening sometime. Little trio go up in the wardroom and play.
To call the officers for chow.
Yeah, and this was the drum and
Drum and clarinet usually.
drum and clarinet
Drum and
thing playing, you know.
Every night, we ran it down through officers' country.
That was really
Play some
exciting.
old Irish jig or whatever.
Very interesting job. Hated it.
But that was the Navy then. But yes.
Hold just a minute. You've 2 minutes left.
Okay.
With 2 minutes left on this tape.
Okay,
But
fine.
the whole thing is, we got to find out who had the first thought for the Navy School of Music. But the development of it goes back to those people who were a long time before us. And all those old guys thought the Navy needed something better than what the fleet musicians that they had. Because they were lousy musicians, in general, not very efficient bands at all.
Hey, Gene, can we take a break just for a moment till we get another tape?
Yeah,
You guys still had Jensen as the leader?
yeah, you Texas was
He
still,
was still your leader.
yeah, and we still wouldn't let him on the dance band. There's a thing going on like a ship would have all of its personnel, and there would be some few guys in it that were musicians, not the schools as they were musicians in high school, this and that, and these fly offs would get some horns, and they come up with a little band on the ship, but they were other rates, and it was not an official band, but it was just a band that would play for the crew's entertainment. And then they started the little E-flat school down in San Diego, was it?
Yeah, well, that was quite a few years before when they started that. That's the one that McMillan and Skinny Morris and that bunch came through.
But where was the other ones? There was one in Newport or something.
What is the time period we're talking about?
Well, prior to
Talking about the late 20s, early 30s,
Okay.
when they had the school out in San Diego. But it was
not official.
it was not a structured school. It
They
was
would
just
buy
a
some
place they got
horns and buy
together
some
and
music. They would play, and these guys would be transferred. Now they got horns and nobody to play them, one of those things. You know?
yeah, and they transfer guys individually from here to there. And the saxophone. There was no organized band per se, no organized library, no one looking out for a library. None of the musical or the administrative development was in any of those bands. Most of the time, they didn't even have what you would qualify as a leader. It'd be just like a bunch of high
It's
school.
kind of like a makeup band.
Yeah, just make up,
There's
it's
just
like a
some
bunch of high school kids get together
college, you know.
and play marches, something like that.
Can you come back to the Navy like for a minute?
Right.
When was it that Thurman got the authorization to establish someplace else?
In 1941, when the music school moved over across the river to the Naval Receiving Station, was when it left the Navy band.
Is that at a cost to you?
Yes. That was when it left the Navy band and J.M. Thurman made lieutenant.
It was no longer a subsidiary of the Navy band. It
Right.
was independent.
It was not an independent command in itself.
Yeah.
He was more like a department head under the commanding officer of the Naval Receiving Station. But he was in charge of the music school. That was, and later on, we got representations in the Bureau of Personnel, and then things started to develop from there. And then this J.I. Carey that we mentioned earlier, which took us down to South America and so forth, he was appointed Chief Warrant Boatswain as the assistant officer in charge of the school. Thurman was on a restricted thing. He was a lieutenant appointed for that purpose. Just like the Navy band, the leader was appointed as a lieutenant, and if he left there, well, he was no longer a lieutenant. And the chief warrant officer they had was Townsend was the assistant leader of the Navy band at the time. He was a tremendous flute player, came out of Curtis Institute. And he was W3, and that's what they appointed him, rather than
Ship's
just
clerk?
No, he had the music thing on him, because it wasn't a regular Navy appointment. It was just on station appointment.
Well, did Thurman have a lyre or star?
I don't remember. I think it was a star, really. I think they all had a star.
Gentlemen, keep talking. I gotta check on my duties.
But I know that Carey was a chief boatswain.
Right.
Yeah.
So he had the boatswain things on. But then when we got over to the Bureau, then it started happening, and it took until 1950, there was a warrant officer made, John Norris was made warrant officer over in the Navy band because he was going to be the new assistant leader of the Navy band. And Max Corey over at the music school made warrant because he was going to be the assistant leader of the Naval Academy band. So they were the first two, but they were also special appointment warrants. And then in 1952, we started making warrants from the general music program. And I was the first one, and then Gustafsson was next, and then Sam Kirshner was next. And those were the first three warrant officers.
That's who the ship's clerk.
Yes, we were appointed as ship's clerk because there was no provisions for music warrant officers. So we were a ship's clerk, and I made W-2 as a ship's clerk. I didn't put on the lyre till after they started making more warrants, and they gave them lyres. And then that's when I put on my lyre, took off the cross bands, and put on the lyre.
Didn't that happen in '56 when Maury became lieutenant
Yes.
and Macmillan? That's when the lyres came on. If I remember.
I think so, but I thought the warrant group before them. No, there wasn't any warrant group before them.
No.
We were
57.
the only three until they started making lieutenants. That's right. And then they put the lyre on, and we were authorized to wear the lyre too.
Lyre were first in '56.
Well, I was in 57.
Yeah, well, that's when they started making warrants again.
Chet wanted me to say something about the sea duty bands. The drummers had to tuck their own drum heads. And the band I was with, we had two drummers. The other drummer couldn't tuck drum heads. So I spent an awful lot of time tucking heads. Bass drum heads, snare drum heads, and all of a sudden, miracle, they started putting out drum heads that were tucked on machines on metal rims, no wooden rims. And that was the end of that tucked drum heads.
Up until that time, they were buying drum heads, and the snare heads are from unborn calves, of course. But the top head is from a regular hide. And most of them came from Afghanistan, and the hair was still on the hide. You know, for the top
Where did you
head.
get all this? Where did you?
When I was in music school, I turned down a lot of drum heads that had hair on them. Because, and in fact, one of the outfits tried to shave the hair off of it so we'd accept them in the Navy. No, I turned down a lot of drum heads that had hair on them from Afghanistan. And they smelled like they were in a North African country, a tanning process. You know, it just smelled like peat, like camel peat. That's what they used to do their leather, to tan their leather. And a lot of them smelled bad.
But there's a natural adhesion to the skin, so you have to soak it and then put it around the rim and bend the spoon handle and then tuck it on the ear, and here, and gradually work your way around. And then when the thing's set up, when it started to dry, the adhesion, it was forever. And if you had lumps and things in it, you couldn't get the damn thing down over the rim with the snare drum. See?
Tucking your head was like tightening up tension on a snare drum today. Just the principle of tucking the head opposite each other as you go across.
Here.
But
Like this.
the big difference is today they don't have hide heads. They now have the Ramo or some of the other plastic heads for all the drums, and they're mating well enough now that they are extremely efficient. You tune your bass drum now, and you can get the 3 harmonic rings just like you did out of a properly tuned bass drum with hide on it. The only thing is the weather conditions don't affect it that much. Where an old hide thing, if you get out in the damp, like you're standing up the quarterdeck all day, and the mist and so forth, well, your drum head just goes shh, and becomes a soggy mess, and you hit the drum and boom. That's all there is to it. The harmonic rings and everything else are gone on an old hide head.
Plastic heads, you only
Tension
20 bucks,
constantly
that's it.
in damp weather.
Yeah, and in damp weather, you had to keep tightening your head and tightening your head. On the old snare drum and bass drum, you had the tighteners on them, and a lot of them didn't have the key system, they just had the turn system on them. And when you get your head nice and tightened up because of the damp weather, and you turn around, go down the chow, and you come up and the sun is out,
That's
and
straight
you
drum.
find out that your drum head was split right down the middle.
That's straight drums. You're not talking about snare drums as such. Straight drums had the things that you did. But snare drums always had a key on it.
Yeah, okay.
Skate key.
Yeah, skate key, that's right. But the bass drum, or the snare drum, or the tom-toms or anything, you come up, from damp weather to dry weather, in half an hour the thing is split right down the middle. And that doesn't happen with the new plastic heads.
Well, with the real heads, you're supposed to loosen it after when you're finished playing. Otherwise, every time you play, you're going to tighten it a little more. And first thing you know, you go down the road.
That's what happens when you're playing up in the damp,
Yeah.
and then you go down for chow and come back up, you don't change the drum. That's too much work for the drummers.
But in the
You just
beginning,
left it that way and you come back up and the head's split.
those plastic heads in the beginning, they didn't have any texture. They had no feeling. You drop the stick on the head and it slides off. You know, it didn't grab. A real head, there's texture. So when you play, it takes over. But these things were clear. And you can be playing like this. Stick and slide away, you know. So they started putting some kind of...
Yeah, well, that was the first ones that came out.
Yeah.
But now you can get those plastic heads now that are so thick that you could hit them with the end of a drumstick and wouldn't even put a dent in them.
Somebody had asked earlier that we, in this whole process that we're beginning, make sure that we address shipboard life, because a lot of people don't know that. And from what I know of shipboard life, it generated from a number of the things, like you're saying, playing before the skipper and playing before the movies.
Well, yeah.
It carried right on and just developed into the program as we do.
Every morning in court, you played colors, and then you played 15 minutes or so of marches afterwards, and then you went in as soon as the mess hall was cleared by the mess cooks, it was cleaned up, and you went into rehearsal. And when they wanted to set up again, your rehearsal was over, and then you had a few minutes to get ready to play the noon concert. And you got through with the noon concert, and sometimes you had the afternoon off, sometimes you didn't. If you had guardship, you certainly didn't. And then you played in the evening before the movies. And then if you're done through with that, then your day's done.
Did you have any other duties that were non-musical?
Oh, yes. We
Not when you
stood
were in port, you didn't.
out at sea.
Out at sea.
We stood
Watch
main
that.
top and foretop watches. And depending on the condition, sometimes it was 4 on and 4 off. Sometimes it was 4 on and 8 off. But in a general run of the thing, it was 4 on and 12 off.
Yeah.
Unless you were in some kind of a battle condition.
But we would like in self-defense, the loading stores, you're in port. And the first time they tried to get us to go along the stores, we said, no, we'll play on the quarterdeck. We bring the band out to play little ditties, like gun tug music. But that's just to get out of play, just to keep up
Did you have
carry
assignments?
stores.
Did you have assignments during, like for battle,
Battle
GQ?
station?
Battle station?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone had battle stations, everybody.
Now, were you assigned in different ways, or was
Yes.
the musicians assigned to a certain function?
2 musicians were assigned to every ship's repair party
Yep.
as stretcher bearers or as phone talkers
Well, they found out that
or whatever they
the
needed to
musicians
do.
were really better talking than an awful lot of the people they had, and people, they spoke clear, they had better diction, this and that, so they
Well,
used them.
when the ship when they scraped the bottom, why it was a choice of either playing while they're scraping the bottom or else scraping the bottom yourself.
Scrape the bottom.
So we'd walk around with the ship, which was up on blocks, and you'd walk under the ship and play, and they're chipping paint, barnacles and stuff, and scraping paint over your head. There's all this crap coming down on the band, but it was better to play in that than it was to be up there scraping or chipping. So we marched back and forth under the ship, playing the Paul Yoder jazz things and marches, or any Mickey Mouse music you can think of that fits on the lyre. We played, and the crew liked it. You know, they always worked better, and they even kept time with the band sometimes, and chip and paint and stuff. So it was a real fun thing.
How were you generally received by the rest of the crew?
They loved us.
They loved us. They called us Bandy.
Absolutely.
We were all Bandy. Nobody knew our names.
We had no trouble going into the head of the chow line, or when Liberty boats come and stuff like that. After you got known on the ship, but before that, if you weren't rated, if you're just first class, which meant the lyre was up top of here, you stood in line with the seamen to get in the Liberty boat. But as soon as they got to know the band and who was in the band, why, you got the head of the line for everything.
It was more of a personal treatment than it was of some kind of a ship rule.
Oh yes,
Apartment.
absolutely. One of the big things, I had a fear of heights. Now, the main top in the Pennsylvania is 130 feet above the main deck. The only access to it was an outside ladder, which went up one of the legs of the triangle. And
Throw them out
I
the
says-
hatch.
I says, I can't go up there, man. I'm afraid of heights. And the boats that's made in charge of the watch said, well, you're either going up there or you're going down there in the brig. I said, damn, I ain't going down that brig. So I thought, man, here we go. I closed my eyes. I went up that ladder scared to death and shaking. And I got up there and opened that hatch, and I was never so glad to open a hatch and close it in all my life. And then when it come to go down, I said, you open the hatch, and said, Jesus, I'm not going to get up that ladder and go down. That was worse than going up. But after about 3 days, I could do that. The ship's out there rolling, raining, or whatever, and I could go down from the mid-watch and pick up a coffee pot with one hand and a bag of sandwiches on the shoulder and climb up that ladder with one hand, and it didn't bother me a bit. Yet I couldn't go to an arena or something like that and look over the edge. And it was only half as high as that main top.
But you understand, the battleships don't. They're riding down in the water. They're not destroyers, which are, like this. But they do roll. They do roll. And you get that high and you roll. Now where you are is not even over the deck. You know, if you fell out then, you're in the water.
What were you doing up there?
Watch, look out.
Look out. Glasses.
Everybody had their own set of binoculars.
The entire circle. Forward is forward of midships. And aft was the other circle.
Speak to two things. on the Pennsylvania, where you were buried, because we lost a band on it, Arizona. And you met earlier on one of the ships you were on, you said you were down in the hole. It seems like I heard you mention ammo.
That was in the Pyro. That was an ammunition ship.
Okay.
That's the one we went through the canal, from Norfolk, through the canal and up to Long Beach, where we caught the,
We just used it as transportation to get to the
Okay.
west coast.
All right. Now, where were you berthed on the Pennsylvania?
on the Pennsylvania. I was attached to the forward repair party, which was down under the nickel steel deck, down at the very bottom of the bow. I was attached to that repair party. You were,
I was with the repair party, which was part of the main deck, except it was back under the boat deck, but it was part of the main deck. And I was stretcher bearer.
But you guys were stretcher bearers.
Yeah.
Yes.
As I understand, and I might be wrong on this, but from what I understand, the band on Arizona were handling ammo.
Yes. Yeah.
yes, a lot of people think that the band, because we were teasing with the Arizona band on the night of December the 6th, because they played for the dance. After we won the competition, they had to play for the dance. And they were down the dock, excuse me, they were down in the dock, and they says, ha ha ha, you guys won, but you gotta play colors in the morning, we get to sleep in. Now, a lot of people think that the Arizona band was sleeping in, and they weren't, because General Porter's had sounded on the Arizona, and those guys were down in the ammunition hold where their duty station was.
It's the wrong place to be.
So they weren't in the bunks like people presupposed they were, because they said they got to sleep in. Well, they didn't. General Porter sounded, they went to their battle station, because the Arizona wasn't the first battleship hit. No, the Oklahoma sank before the Arizona was even hit. So they had time to get down their battle station very quickly.
What were you actually doing when the attack occurred?
We were
Getting ready to play colors.
I was on my way to college, first call hadn't gone, and I was going along the deck with my snare drum, I was going my colors, splash in the water, which didn't excite me because the Army waterbombed Sunday morning sometime. The OD said, "Man, he's at the," I said, "Yes, sir." On the next one was not a water bomb. It blew the, what was that island?
Fort Allen.
Fort Island, the hangar. 200 feet in the air with the debris. Planes turn up and there's the red spots. He says, "What the F was that?" I said, "That's a Japanese." That's a Japanese.
Did you recognize
bomb
it at the time before it was happening?
See, here's where his conception and mine different, because he was late that morning.
I wasn't back with the band.
Late again?
Only twice in my entire career.
But I was back with the band, and we were lined up, standing there, and first call was just about to sound, and we looked up, we saw all these planes coming over the IEA hill. And I forget who was next to me. I think Bill Cole was next to me, I believe. Either he or Eddie Stroback. And I says, "Man, where did the Army get all them damn planes?" Because they used to play games of "I got you."
Yeah.
You know, they'd come over and drop flour bags on Fort Island to catch Fort Island to sleep. So we looked, where did they get all those planes? And they kept coming and kept coming. And then they started diving. And then a big black thing came out of the bottom of the first plane. And we said, "Look at the size of that damn flour bag." And it came down, and we watched, and it hit the hangar on the end of Fort Island. And the whole hangar went hundreds of feet in the air with all the PBYs and fighters and everything that was on Fort Island. And it went up. Next plane came in from the other thing, and it was a torpedo plane. And it loosed the torpedo, and that's the splash he's talking about. And it went over, and went under the Helena, and under the Oglala, which they had tied up in the Pennsylvania space, the
10-10.
10-10 dock.
What kind of ships were they?
That was the Helena was a square stern light cruiser, and the Oglala was a minesweeper.
What? Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Old Fall River Steamboat, really, which was a minesweeper.
Didn't it just go?
But they tied it up midships to the Helena, so it looked like a fat battleship. It was just a week earlier, we were at that dock, Pennsylvania, big fat battleship. And it hit the dock and sank the Oglala. The torpedo was shallow enough that it went in and hit the piling of the dock and blew up, and that sank the Oglala. The Pennsylvania was put into dry dock 3 days before Pearl Harbor, and 2 screws taken off of her. And in the dock in front of us was the Cassin and the Downs, the 2 destroyers. They got the first 2 bombs, and they blew up under our bow.
One of them capsized, and the other was on fire. So they had to flood the docks.
And they
So the fire come back and set us on fire.
they set us in fire on the
You were
inside.
aboard Pennsylvania at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were aboard.
They set the inside of the bow on fire, the paint, and inside the bow from the heavy fire outside. And they're trying to put the fire out with fire extinguishers and fire hoses, and there's no water for the fire hoses. And they're using mattresses and everything else to smother this fire. We notified the bridge, and the bridge says, flood the magazines. Flood number 1 magazine. Because in that magazine was all the black powder in addition to the 14-inch gunpowder. So they went, opened the floodgates in the magazine, said, hey, there's no water, we're in dry dock. So that's when they send crews out to open up the dry dock gates to flood the dry dock. And those were the days it took 3 men to turn that big wheel to open those gates in the dry dock. So eventually we got water in there, but we had a couple guys overcome by the smoke. And we're taking one of the guys up through the hatch, and we took him up to the 2nd deck, and about that time the whole ship really shook. And when we opened up the next hatch, that's when we saw where the bomb hit and all the debris and everything else.
Was that the big one come down to
Yeah.
the Marine gun
Yeah,
mount?
that was the one that came down.
They got the Marines and anti-aircraft gun.
Well, it was casement guns. They were on the casement guns on the half deck.
Yeah, but it was an anti-aircraft gun.
They were broadside guns, 8-inch. Those were the 8-inch broadside guns. The 525s were on top of the thing up by the boat deck.
No, that's what it was. And it came down through in the X division.
Oh yeah, right down through the casement deck.
Yeah.
Onto the X division.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that blew up most of the superstructure
Yeah.
and the 5-inch guns in the casemate.
I figured this was a 500-pound bomb.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that.
And when we opened that hatch to bring the guy up through the last hatch, and all you could see was all of the smoke and smell and fire of the explosion, and some guys hollering. And someone says, get him over in the dock, come back in, there's more in here. And we took him over in the dock and laid him there in the dock and come back up, and from then on we just carried wounded. And then after we had all the wounded off, we started carrying dead off.
Wasn't the exhibition before they brought these guys on the dock who had been to church aboard to buster them?
Yeah.
And that's where the bomb came down to the Marine mount in there. I was one of the stretch birds that had to clean that place out.
Yeah, well, so was I.
That's the first time I ever heard Presto swear. He said, let's get the hell out of here. I never think the kid never swore in his life.
But that was that was basically the thing. And then right after that, as soon as we had all the dead off, they sounded band call. Then we mustered up the forecastle, band muster in the forecastle. We went up there and broke out our instruments and started playing marches and stuff while the other guys were cleaning up the ship, cleaning up the debris. And after we got through with that, they said, carry ammunition. They secured the band, and we went and carried ammunition like everybody else from the ammunition barge that had pulled up in the 1010 dock in the meantime, and we carried ammunition back through there. We had no water, no fresh water on the ship. No heads were functioning, none of that stuff. And we had a makeshift head over in the dock. That's where we had to go for the water. And we had to stand watches with some of us with the rifle. That night I was in the main top watch. And the guy in the submarine, we had some planes come out from the States. That night I think there was 7 planes. And they come out, and the guy in the submarine, 1010 dock, opened fire. Well, every gun in the fleet opened fire. There was only one problem. I was up in that main top of the Pennsylvania, and I could see the tracer bullets going by the main top. But they shot down all those planes anyhow. And then, was it you that ran into trouble with the exec out on the dock, or Fritz?
Oh, no, it was me.
He has a good story.
It was the exec of the sub, which is where the machine gunner was that did this. They put us on watch, walking up and down the dock out there with a loaded rifle. Imagine that. And this thing said was, you hear footsteps coming in the dark? Why you say halt and we recognized advance or halt, you know. If they don't stop, you ask them once more. If they don't stop, you jack a bullet into the rifle. And you know the sound that makes. Slick. So I'm out there and I hear these footsteps. It says halt to be recognized. Halt to be recognized, nothing. So I jacked around into that thing, and it makes a terrible sound in the middle of the night, in the dark. This voice says, for Christ's sake, I'm the exec of this destroyer. I'm visiting your captain aboard. I says, advance to be recognized. So he came on in. I said, okay. He says, Christ, Dick, you're going to shoot me? I said, yeah.
Speak to the battles of the bands. The battles between the bands, exactly the bands.
This was, all the battleships had their own band.
Cruising flags had bands too.
Yeah, the flags, the Naval Station Band, Marine Corps Band, and it was this elimination process. I mean, there were played at one time in the beginning, 4 during the night.
Yeah. But this was about the 4th round.
Yeah, but it was a gradual elimination. There were specific types of tunes you had to play. They didn't pick the tune. You had to do what they call the jump tune, right?
Right.
Jump tune, a specialty tune like Well Get It or something like that. A ballad.
Right.
Some Latin thing.
Right. And one choice of your own.
And then you choose the other. And there was judges that would give you marks. And at the end of that night, they would add up the marks and see which band had won.
And the applause.
Were eliminated.
And the applause in the arena.
Yeah, that.
Counted in on the marks too.
Now, who were these judges?
Like young officers with musical experience that were interested in doing it.
What they were really going by was the crowd reaction. They didn't know enough about the music to know who was playing the best music. They went by the crowd reaction.
Okay, now how about the other bands? Other than you guys?
Some of them were fairly good bands.
Yeah, but I mean, you know any specifics about those bands? People in those bands?
Well, they were just, depending on the number of the band and how long they had been there, we would be either very close, or just we knew them but guess?
Some of them are numbered bands, like Band 2 is still there. Band 3 had already been relieved. Band 4 was still there. Band 5 was still there in Detroit.
Yeah, yeah, that bad.
Band 6 was, where was Band 6 on? Oh. Band 6 was on one of these ships there. And then Band 7 was there. And of course, Band 8. But then there was also some of the old fleet bands involved. But they were wiped out real early.
Yeah,
It was the number bands that were in there tugging at each other.
Proved our worth already.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. And we were tied at the last, at the final thing, we were tied with the Tennessee band, I believe.
Well, no, they had survived the elimination
Right.
until the thing got down to 2. And it was us 2 to Tennessee.
Yeah. And at the end up, we ended up, it was a tie. So they asked each of us to pick our own number for a tiebreaker.
Oh.
And Axel Jensen, our leader, said, "Get up White Heat." Now, this was one of the fastest tunes that you ever heard in your life.
Huntsman. You remember? Stock.
A real fine one Clark jump thing,
E flat.
no fan. And we fussed at him. We didn't want to play that. We wanted to play one of our own tunes, a Les Brown tune or something. But he insisted. And then Tennessee got up their thing, and they played. And then we were next, and we played White Heat. The crowd went crazy.
One.
And everybody up on their feet and applauding and hollering and everything else. And we won the thing. So after the competition was over, then they had a dance. Well, the Arizona band had to play for the dance. So that's how we met them on the dock after it was over.
They had to go out into the stream in their Liberty boat, and we just walked aboard the first vessel.
So that's when we got to teasing them about them sleeping in and we playing colors the next morning. That's where that story.
I could just barely play the introduction on that White Heat. Come down, it was the 5th, down chromatically. Go back to the 5th, down, 5th, down, like that. So fast you couldn't even think that fast.
But-
So we had to memorize it.
And then let's go on past that now. We're going back to the States. We came back, I think, on the 28th of December. We got back to the States and went into Hunters Point.
We got underway
Right
before
up.
Christmas.
Beg pardon?
We got underway out of Pearl before Christmas.
Yeah, we got in the 28th of December.
It's been
We got into San Francisco of Hunters Point, Bethlehem Steel Shipyard for repairs.
New aircraft runs.
Yeah, and when they did that, they finally put there was no ship at Pearl Harbor that had a radar on it. All of them were either on the East Coast or on the West Coast. But when we came back to Hunters Point, they put the radar on, a big bed spring radar on us, and took off the old 525 guns, put on the dual mount 538s. They gave the gunners mates and the first musicians, which is first class, the manuals on the dual mount 538s to study the manual. Well, the gunners mates were trained to be gunners mates through the apprentice system. They worked up seamen to get up to be second class and first class gunners mates. But the musicians, were always studying, used to stuff. So when they studied the manual, then they gave us all tests. Well, as it turned out, the first musicians made much higher marks than the gunners made. So they made us gun captains on those dual mount 38s, 538s. So I was a gun captain on one of them. Fritz was a gun captain on one of them. Gene says he was a pointer on one of them. Were you first class then? First?
No.
Oh, okay.
I
That
didn't
makes
even know it was possible.
that makes the difference.
I wasn't into that.
But the first musicians became the gun captains in the dual Mont 538s. So we were no longer in repair party or stretcher bearers. We were now gunners. So
we've been going at this now for almost 2 hours.
yeah.
And you two gentlemen really have given us a tremendous insight into a lot of things that a lot of people really know little about. Some of your stories I knew, but we needed to get this on record. And as I stated while he was changing the tape, I'll be talking to Tony and going back to 35, probably involved you and Tony Dutch.
Well, maybe we can put it together.
Yeah, yeah. And I just hope that everybody understands that this undertaking is not frivolous. It's certainly not frivolous on my part, because here we've got the Navy Musicians Association, and everything that's music in the Navy really comes under this umbrella. So we're talking about a large, humongous, ongoing program, and it takes a lot of coordination. And I just hope that the powers to be don't think that this is something that we're going to poop over and have next year. I mean, this is an ongoing thing.
Well, you're going to find a lot of other guys that are going to talk, and their stories are going to be probably as equally impressive or contributing as ours was. I hope what we've done here tonight, though, will be laying a foundation on which to build. As you said before, when you analyze the talk tonight, you say we should have more information on this, we should have more information on that, and you come back for more information from either one of us. Or where we had minor conflicts, you might want to resolve that.
Yeah, sure the history touch. If you want to get just my side of what I did.
Well, we'll be getting.
But he knows the history.
We'll be getting guidance from a lot of different people, but certainly you guys, because you are the most active. And I'll have to catch Fritz. Maybe before next year, I'll go down to Pensacola.
There's a guy from Band 1 who was at the reunion down in New Orleans. I think his name was Froboda.
I remember the name.
But you might check the records back then. Find out.
Yeah.
He might still be around, be able to give you some good information too.
Yeah. And it's just, and what we've talked about here tonight is really just one aspect.
Oh yeah.
Just one aspect. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate this, to just start the ball rolling somewhere. We probably ought to give ourselves a break. But,
Yeah, I'm ready to go to bed.
Yeah.